ready for autofill. And that will enable a single pass of autofill when the form is ready to accept the data. And that can account, like the async version can account for cases where we don't know on the client side, okay, the country is Brazil or Japan or Vatican City. We don't know necessarily on the client side all the fields that are required for each country. We can fetch that data and be aware of it on through a fetch. So we have essentially a working API, or at least working in some cases, with merge conflicts. Apparently, it didn't have merge conflicts when it was working. But yeah, essentially, this is a snippet of an internal demo, but so we can see here that the neighborhood field, essentially this is the data that was received by the API to the event, and then that enabled the code to add neighborhood, which got filled. So this is not necessarily super impressive on its own, but it does enable us to solve this use case and have a more reliable path for interoperable autofill. And what we're hoping is that once this lands and gets adopted, we're hoping to push this in other browsers as well, which will also create a stronger case for why we need testing infrastructure in Test Driver in order to be able to do all that. Okay. Yeah. So that's it on autofill. Then the other thing, the other subject we talked about is secure. From a security perspective, we had PCI v4 landing at the end of March. So for those of you who are blissfully unaware of what PCI v4 is, that's a payment card industry security standard, the fourth version. And that version added a lot of requirements to what websites need to do on the web in order to be able to accept credit cards. And some of those requirements were not entirely feasible to actually do. For example, please account for all the hashes of all the scripts that are running on your page at all times. That is not a capability that the web had. And people responded to that by setting up crawlers and pretending that it actually meets the security needs. But yeah, well, we thought that we need to do better. So essentially, we needed to have sub-resource integrity for all the things, as well as be able to know what is running. So ES module SRI is something we landed a while ago in anticipation of this happening. Hash reporting API, essentially a CSV directive that reports the hashes of all external scripts that are running on the page. This shipped in Chromium at the end of last year. So it is now shipping. Also shipped in, both of these also landed in WebKit. ES module is shipped in production Safari. I'm not sure about hash reporting yet. And now the next items on the list is what is now integrity policy that was born as require SRI 4. I have a working implementation for require SRI4 that I'm planning to now kill and replace with an integrity policy header as a result of discussions with Mozilla as they're working on shipping a broader application integrity solution. So they asked us nicely to figure out something that will work in a more holistic way rather than a one-off require SRI4. And even though this is resulting in at least a milestone delay, I think it's better for us to think holistically. So I'm currently implementing an integrity policy header. I have not yet really working CL, if that's of interest. And beyond that, signature-based SRI is something that Mike West is working on that will enable us to address cases and essentially enforce integrity in cases where we can't have the hash ahead of time. So for third parties that are evergreen, we won't be able to integrate their hashes without syncing their build process with our build process. But if we have trusts and legal agreements in place, one can have essentially be able to have integrity that verifies the provenance of the scripts rather than their actual content. So this is signature-based SRI. Mike West is working on that. And I'm hoping later this year to also look into Navigate 2, the CSP Navigate 2 directive, which will enable us to essentially limit what pages this page can navigate to. This is not currently a PCI requirement, but it seems, at least in my view, it makes sense that if you're like essentially PCI v3 was limited to the frame, the checkout, like the frame that contained the checkout details. That frame had to have a bunch of requirements regarding who's committing code to it and making sure that it's secure, but the overall page was not. PCI v4 applies to the overall page. I suspect that a future iteration of that, if we're hardening the checkout page, attackers will move on to attack other pages that lead to the checkout page. So this is something I want to investigate and hopefully have something in place before this becomes a requirement. And regardless, it seems like something we should be defending against. Also landed some same origin restrictions that allow page to avoid any opener relationships, even for same origin pages, for reasons. No, I mean, there are, like in various cases, you have multiple apps on the same origin that are of different security exposure characteristics. And it makes sense to limit open scripting ability between one app and the other. That's essentially the use case for that. And that also shipped in both Chromium and WebKit. In terms of cookies, a couple of the security-related proposals we're pushing at the IETF. Delete cookie to be able to enable the server to delete a cookie regardless of who set it and on what path and on what domain it was set. And an HTTP-only prefix that will enable a server to know that a cookie was set with HTTP only, so set by the server, rather than set by JavaScript and pretending to be a well-known cookie. So that those are two issues that we're running into and we like to close in terms of gaps. Then on the performance side, we have for script loading, shipped multiple import maps in Chromium and WebKit. That was, yeah, super useful change in terms of correctness from our perspective, because Shopify stores are being built by, there's the merchant code, there's theme code, there is code from different apps. And if any of those included an import map and or JavaScript modules in the wrong order, everything blew up. It also includes in the editor, it also includes Shopify code. So there's a lot of moving parts, and import map model wasn't built for this. Now it is, and it enables a bunch of it enables us to use import map in places we couldn't use it before, allowing us to avoid a lot of cache invalidation. So that's neat. I'm also hoping to look into better script loading mechanisms. This is a long-standing, well-known issue, but essentially there is no good way to load scripts on the web today. Then this is something that Kuhei raised in 2017, I think, and it is still true, and this is something I'm hoping to look into. Another is looking into some form of streamed bundle execution that is it is one of those things that is always important but never urgent, so it keeps getting delayed. But I'm hoping to look into that and see if this is something that we can, essentially improve the bundling story around, like the JavaScript delivery story in general. Then for real user measurements, we have a long wish list. At the top of that is soft navigations, because some of our stores are multi-page apps, but some of them are not. We also have framework-based stack, and those kind of apps are essentially flying blind. There is no way for us to measure a lot of their performance metrics. Similar for some of we also have our own apps so the Shopify admin app through which merchants manage their stores. It's a very large web app, thousands of modules, and essentially it's all built on custom metrics that are not necessarily cutting it and don't have visibility into pains and whatnot. We also would love attribution to different parts of the page. We talked about, like I mentioned, that essentially a page is built through code from merchants as well as apps. If the apps are tanking the page's performance, right now we have heuristics to guess that based on long animation frame data, but not a ton more. And it would be an interesting space to explore how we can somehow annotate different parts of the page to be reflected in performance metrics. Font performance metrics is another thing that could be we feel that there is a gap there in terms of for font swaps, for example, there is no way on the web today to measure them at scale. How often do font swaps happen and how disrupting they are? Server timing trailers is another thing that we're interested in to be able to better profile SSR and essentially server timing today is composed only of headers, and therefore you have to send it before you send anything. But if you're not buffering all the data, there is no way for you to send server timing later. And then detailed redirect data is another thing that we feel like essentially an opt-in to expose redirect data for cross-origin resources. Then, speculation rules. That's something we started playing around with, and I talked to Rashida earlier about missed prefetch pre-render reporting, which seems critical in order to be able to ship speculation rules at scale. So essentially, for everything that goes beyond the conservative speculation rules, we need to estimate the backend costs before we can ship more aggressive speculation rules to all shops. So having some reporting on how often a certain strategy have misses seems critical here. Similarly, for clearing the cache, I saw that there is a proposal for a clear site data prefetch or something along those lines. That also is critical in cases where the prefetched asset changed between the time that it was prefetched and the time that the user actually clicked. So one example is adding to cart. So the user can perform actions that we know have modified the page. So for themes that we control, we can have JavaScript that adapts the page, but there are a lot of merchants out there where we don't have that control. And in those cases, the only way for us to apply more aggressive strategies is to be able to clear the cache. Another interesting mode that came up is somewhere between prefetch and pre-render, where it would be neat to have a prefetch that gets all the sub-resources, but also does all the processing for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript compilation, but without running any actual JavaScript. Because some of the scripts are not ready to deal, like analytics scripts are not necessarily ready to deal with pre-rendering. And also running scripts is likely to increase the backend load because some of those scripts call APIs that do things that we would like to postpone to actual activation. So, but again, it is not our scripts to control. So having some form of either extended prefetch that does all those things or a no script pre-render, that feels like something that would be very powerful to have in terms of speculation rules feature that would be a better fit for us compared to current pre-render. Another, I don't know if an alternative, but essentially, one of the things I saw when looking into prefetching and versus pre-render and the benefits, it seems like for a lot of our merchant sites, we go from site to site where the head is identical, the styles are the same, and yet it takes the browser on a beefy machine 200, 300, 400 milliseconds to process the HTML and calculate the styles. And it seems like something that we could improve in terms of getting caches in place and reuse a lot of the artifacts from previous navigations in the current navigation. Yeah, and other than that, I guess configurable moderate is also something that came up. So a way to set the number of milliseconds for moderate configuration. A polyfill could be very interesting, and this is something that I could essentially, I feel like I could push for prefetch, like a link-rel prefetch support in WebKit, which is already implemented but not enabled by default. If there was a polyfill, that would make it easy for me to justify that work. And then regarding mobile heuristics for speculation rules, it seems like a semantically different thing. So it would be great to see that happen. It would be great for it to be a different keyword rather than using one of the existing keywords. Finally, for identity, FedCM, Sam talked about how much we love FedCM, so I'm not going to expand on that all too much. Fence frames and unpartitioned data seem like another important use case that will enable, for example, customized login buttons, customized payment buttons, customized discounts, essentially enabling our centralized shop to display, giving our centralized shop a display surface on individual merchant stores without exposing. There's a debate on any data or a lot of data, but without exposing too much. And WebAuthn is also an effort we are super interested in and using heavily. And with that, I went through the laundry list, and essentially what I would love from y'all is if you have any commerce related question or would like any commerce related feedback, please reach out. And if you see any overlap between our interest and yours, let me know. And with that, any questions?
For autofill, I didn't quite follow the information flow, like who started and then to do communication back and forth. How well would that work with autofill coming from extensions?
For extensions, I believe it should work because extensions could capture so they could capture an autofill event coming from the browser and then intercept it. I guess they could also trigger the event themselves, and therefore, like the same flow could be implemented if browser autofill is turned off by the extension. The extension could fire the event and perform the same flow, essentially. Presumably that it can, it could wait for the promise to resolve. So I believe it can work. Fine, we haven't tested it at all with an extension, but I think it should work.
Okay.
I had a more general question. So Shopify a couple years ago started hiring a bunch of web standards people and really investing in web standards, and a lot of other big websites that could benefit from better web standards don't do that. And I was wondering what's different for Shopify and how can we encourage the other sites to invest like this?
So most of the web standards people that Shopify hired are not actively working on web standards. I'm essentially, I'm the first to make the pitch of like, I want to work on web standards, and they said yes. I think that part of that is the long-term vision of Shopify, where it's like, if you're thinking about your next 2 quarters, it does not make sense to invest in web standards, and it does not make sense to invest in the web platform. You need leadership with long-term vision. I don't know how you can create that, but what we can do is try to recognize places that already have that long-term vision and then convince them that it's possible. Because I think a lot, like the big barrier I had also like back at Akamai and starting out at Shopify is to convince people that it's possible, that like, okay, we can do this web platform thing, but it's going to be something that will only be able to ship 3 years from now. So it's irrelevant, and we have these hacks that kind of work. So why bother? What we were like, basically with multiple import maps, with CSV hash reporting, like CSV hash reporting took me like, clock time was 6 weeks to get it from proposal to shipping in Chromium and WebKit. Not shipping, but landed in Chromium and WebKit, and then 4 more weeks until it shipped in Chromium. And multiple import maps was also an impactful project internally because it's a correctness issue, but with landing the standard, landing the implementation, and then a polyfill that was basically Guy Bedford, who owns ES Module Shim, implemented the polyfill for that, which we're now using. We can now use import maps everywhere without worrying about it. In non-supporting browsers, we pay extra for kilobytes, but it's like the polyfill wouldn't have existed if the standard wouldn't be there, because we didn't know what to polyfill. We didn't know how to like merge import maps before we actually thought about it collectively and wrote it down. And so this is, yeah, and this is an effort where I was, Jake was involved, and talked to Dominic and Hiroshige and Guy Bedford and the broader standards community. We figured out how can we merge multiple import maps into one. So essentially, I guess the short answer is we need to show people that it's possible. And then the long-term thinking folks will potentially follow.
How much does Firefox interoperability matter?
Interoperability, it matters, but less than more popular browsers. But yeah, it's in our support matrix. So yeah. And that's also somewhere where like, I don't remember, like in the keynote this morning, Stephanie talked about like feature adoption, and features that can be, have a fallback or have a polyfill are significantly more adopted. And I see this every day. Like we cannot use features that have no reasonable fallback in anywhere in our support metrics, which goes back to, I don't remember which Safari, but like, years ago. It goes back for many, many years. So yeah, fallbacks are critical, autofills are critical.
So I work on Meta in that browser, and we are a WebView based browser. I know we talk about browser standards a lot. Are any of these? So for WebView, we also work with the Android autofill framework a little bit. How do you expect that signal and promise to fire between WebView and the autofill framework?
To be honest, I haven't looked into that. I'm assuming that as long as the autofill signal can be intercepted, and then refired, I'm assuming that it should work fine. Essentially, like if I'm looking at the relevance cell, I think most of the code, we have here code and components out of like content, and then link. Nothing here is above content, even though, like, I'm not sure this is, yeah.
I expect the answer to this is buried somewhere in how autofill is integrated into both Chrome and WebView on Android. And if it's done in a nice way, it probably just works. And if there's some hacks involved, which I'm not surprised by for WebView, maybe it doesn't. It's definitely a good thing to ask about in like any intent to ship on here. It's like, hey, is this support on WebView? Has anyone tested it?
Because on Android, it doesn't work with the browser autofill manager. There's an Android autofill manager that it goes into for WebView.
Yes, but that's above content, right?
Yes.
So
But I think it skips like autofill manager.
it skips the autofill manager?
It might. I'll need
Okay.
to take a look at that. I think
That's-
it goes into it through a different path.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is useful, because yeah, this is all like I have, this is all me. I don't know what I'm doing, dog kind of thing. So thank you.
And then the other subsequent question is for autofill, like we try to get metrics for, because we know from a WebView standpoint, like sometimes we try to autofill something and then it doesn't always fill in the form because of various like restrictions as we talked about before. So we autofill and then we wait for like some quote unquote amount of time and then we check to see whether the fields are actually filled in and before we try to potentially autofill again. But with the promise thing, now we have to wait potentially longer. Is there any sort of idea to like tell us that, hey, you guys are done? I guess that information will have to be coming back up through the whole Android autofill framework as well, so we can check to see whether the form has been filled or.
Yeah, or alternatively, we can also expand the, no, I guess, because what is the source of the delay between autofill firing and having the values actually be there from your perspective? Because it seems like if the form is ready for autofill, then it should be immediate, right?
That's what you would think. We have some, the worst one I've seen, it took like 2 seconds for the form to be filled in, and it actually like scrolls to every single element, sets a focus on it, fills it, and then go to the next one. And
But-
for certain Shopify sites where you have the honeypot fields, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 for the payment fields, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 again.
So- The goal of all this is to avoid the honeypot fields, because right now, I guess, what we're doing is we have all the fields for all the things hidden from the user, and then they get, like, we have hidden fields that are filled, which is not great from a privacy perspective. And then we extract the values from that, create a new form, and put the values in the new form. And okay, so that is what you're validating. You're validating that the honeypot fields were proper, like basically you're validating that the site did its job correctly.
Yes.
Okay. I guess, so ideally, none of this would be necessary if, with the new API and with the ecosystem moving to this. If it is, I can see websites providing a signal of we're done with autofill processing or whatnot, but
What venues are you discussing this in? Is it all like
that is
BlinkDev or?
that is an amazing question. I don't know what working groups to take this to. So this is all currently YCG and back channels with various browser teams, and having an actual what venue should autofill go to?
It feels maybe like editing, but I'm not sure that that's the right place.
Okay.
But we should go through your list and see if there's working groups, because you've connected to a bunch of people for each of the individual topic areas.
Yeah.
But if you hadn't presented here, they would not have found it. And there should be a more systematic way to find the right people.
Yeah. Yeah. So for everything security, that's WebUpSec, that's easy. But for autofill, yeah, I'm not maybe editing. I don't, but yeah. Okay.
I'm super excited about autofill too. I don't see it so much from an editing perspective. The parts that I'm excited about are outside of editing, but the more I dig into autofill, the more I'm finding the massive amount of opportunities there. I wanted to show a demo afterwards if that.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that.
We're over time.
We are way over time. Yes. Thanks all.